Good morning. Welcome to today's lesson. My name is Miss Gasa, and I hope you are very well and it's not very cold where you are. Today, I want us to start off with this page. Please have a look for a moment at all these faces. There's 6 of them. Have a look and just think about it for a moment. Do you recognize any of them? Do you know what they do? And I want you to raise your hand, or you can just write on the chat if you know anything about the people that are on this page. Anything at all. So there's 3 women there and there's 3 men. Anything you know about these faces? Have you seen them before? Can you recognize them? Welcome, Mac. Welcome, Vanika. Welcome, Palija and Broccoli. Welcome to today's lesson. It's very lovely to have you. And welcome, Bob, as well, who just came in. So, Bob, we're just looking at this page, and I want you to tell me if there's any people that you recognize on this page. Do you know what they do? Do you know what they're famous for? So I can give you a hint. So these are famous people. Okay. We'll start with the lady in yellow and blue. Her name is Chimamanda Ngozi. If you know anything about her, you can tell us in the chat or you can raise your hand. And we also have somebody who wrote the poem In Detention. It's a very famous poem and it's a satirical poem. You are absolutely right, Brooklyn. The last guy is Chinua Achebe. So he's famous for writing the novel Things Fall Apart. He's from Nigeria, the same as Chimamanda Ngozi. We also have the lady with the bob. She is a Nobel Prize winner. She won a Nobel Prize in 1991 for literature. And one of her books is called July's People. Okay, and we also have Bessie Head there at the top. She wrote the book Maru, and Christopher van Wyk wrote the poem In Detention. And Zeksim Da, right there next to Chimamanda Ngozi, who wrote the Half of a Yellow Sun. And Zeksim Da, I'm sure you know him for the book Ways of Dying. So these are some famous writers from our continent. And I'm showing you this slide because you all have the potential to become professional writers. You're already doing it in your English classes and you've been doing it for 12 years in school already. So I just want you to think about that and for it to be something that you consider, especially for today's lesson, because we are looking at active and passive voice. So this is our topic for today, active and passive voice, different ways to enhance your writing. As I've mentioned here, I am Miss Gasa and this is my email address. Okay, so at the end of this lesson, you'll be able to differentiate between passive and active voice. You'll be able to understand why active or passive voice is suitable in certain contexts and not so suitable in others. And you are going to create sentences and have activities on passive and active voice. I made a mistake there in passive and passive voice. It should be active. All right, a special mention to Vivek, who did her homework, who emailed me her homework. Thank you so much. I'd like to encourage more and more of you to do your homework, and I will respond and give you feedback. Okay, so you're going to have homework at the end of this lesson, and I'm going to give you a Word document so that it will be easier for you to do the homework and send it back to me. All right, please do not change the document. Keep it in Word format, right? And if you have any problems, maybe you don't have a Microsoft Word or anything like that, let me know so that we can find a solution around it. Don't just not do your homework. I think that it'll be very beneficial for you to do that. The other day, we're reading the poem Remember, and we came across the word bereft. So here's the definition of it, just more information on the word. It is the past tense of the word bereave, and it means beyond grief-stricken and mournful, the loss of what you love and no chance of getting it back. All right, class, remember, if you have any questions, if you'd like us to stop at any point during today's lesson, please just raise your hand or write your question on the chat. Okay. All right, passive or active voice. We have 2 paragraphs, and I want you to tell me if they are passive or active. So we're going to start reading the first one, but I would like a volunteer. I need somebody who's going to read for us. So one person who will read the first paragraph and another that will read the second paragraph. Please remember that it's very important that you practice your reading and your pronunciation. It'll help with your pronunciation skills, your fluency skills. So it is lovely to read out loud. And you know what the nice thing about it is? In this class, nobody will see you. They'll just hear your voice. So you won't have to worry about people staring at you while you're reading. Volunteers to read the first paragraph? If you'd like to read the first paragraph, you can just raise your hand, or you can just tell me on the chat that you'd like to read. I see Mac's hand is raised. Can okay, Mac, you're going to read for us?
Hello.
Hi, Mac.
Can you hear? Hi. Should I start reading? Hello.
Can hear you very well.
Hello. Okay. What sound is going? What if I can? Hello.
Hi, we can hear you. You can start reading.
Oh, okay. The inscriptions on the gravestones were obscured by darkness, but the marble was still cracked by Jason's hammer strike as a photograph was taken by a hidden camera. Was that fine?
Zama, just check your mic. I can't hear you. I think there's something wrong.
Apologies about that, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, I think Mac was going to read that first paragraph for us. Mac?
Hello?
Hi.
Okay,
Okay, let's try
again.
it again. Okay, let's go back to that page. There we go. Okay, go for it.
The inscriptions on the gravestones were obscured by the darkness, but the marble was still cracked by Jason's hammer strike, as if photograph was taken by a hidden camera.
Nice job. Thank you so much. Can you hear me snapping for you?
Excuse me?
Can you hear me snapping to say well done?
Thank you.
Thank you. Great job. Okay, so that's our first paragraph. Okay, so you have to tell me whether it's passive or active, but before you do, let's have a look at the second paragraph as well. I need a volunteer to read the second paragraph. You can raise your hand or just tell me on the chat. Volunteers to read the second paragraph. All right, I'll read the second paragraph. Darkness obscured the gravestone inscriptions, but Jason cracked the marble with a hammer strike as a hidden camera took a photograph. Okay, so I want you to tell me the first paragraph, is it passive or is it active? And the second one? Bob says the first paragraph is passive, and Vanika says the first paragraph is passive as well. Okay, so the second paragraph is active, Vanika says, and Bob says the second paragraph is active. Okay, so tell me why you say that. Why do you say the first paragraph is passive and the second is active? You're absolutely right. The first one is passive and the second one is active. So tell me why you say that. Remember, you can raise your hand or write it on the chat. Bob says the second paragraph is active because of the word by. Okay, that's absolutely right. Share your opinion with us. Why do you think the first one is passive? Why is the second one active? Bob says it's because of the word by. The second one is active because of the word by. Okay, let's have a look at these two paragraphs. In the first one, where's the subject? In the second one, where's the subject? What do we start with? First paragraph is passive because of the word by. Darkness is the subject. Okay, we'll see if you're correct. I'm not going to say anything at the moment. We'll come back to this page once we have learned more about passive and active, and you are going to answer this question for me again. So let's look at some concepts to remember when we talk about passive and active voice. Passive voice changes the focus of the attention in the sentence from the subject to the object. Okay? Remember, the subject is the person or thing doing something. And the object is having something done to it. So let's have a look at a very simple example. I love you. I love you. What kind of sentence is it? Passive or active? Vanika says it is active. You are absolutely right, Vanika. Mac, you also say it's active? Yes, it is active. Right? Why is it active? So we've already read that passive voice changes the focus of the attention in the sentence from the subject to the object. So our subject, so it is active. What is our subject? Let's start there. Yes, Vanika, it begins with the subject I. Okay, so I, something is happening to the I. Love is happening to the I, and our object is you. If we were to attempt to change this sentence from active to passive, how would we, what would be the answer? Okay. So change the sentence, I love you, to passive voice. Okay. Nice try, Mac. You are loved by me. You are loved by me. Vanika also says, fantastic. You are absolutely right. You are loved by her or him. Nice attempt. Or you love me. Is that correct? What do you think of that? You love me. You love me? Yes, does it work as a passive? Do you agree? Disagree? So often when we change, Vanika says she agrees, when we change passive voice to active voice or vice versa, we might have to add a bit of words so that it makes sense, or it might sound wrong. Imagine changing I love you into passive voice without changing the words. So you'd probably sound, it would be you love I, which is grammatically incorrect. And this is something you need to keep in mind when you are doing active and passive voice. All right, let's have a look at a couple of examples. And you are going to tell me if it is Passive or active? The whale swallowed Pinocchio. The whale swallowed Pinocchio. Write down your answer, please. Bob says it is active. Mac also says it is active. JJ says it's active. Brooklyn says it's active. Okay. The second one, Pinocchio was swallowed by the whale, obviously is passive, because if the first one is active, the second one is passive. All right, so the concept is an active sentence emphasizes who did something. So we can call this the doer. And in the first sentence, the doer is the whale, okay? Making the whale the subject. And it is happening to, the action is happening to Pinocchio. The object becomes more important. The object becomes more important than the doer. Wait, yes, the whale swallowed Pinocchio. We said it is active. Pinocchio was swallowed by the whale. We said it is passive. Just take note of that. So here are some of the uses of passive voice. We use passive voice when you want to focus, when the focus is on what happened or the object. For example, I was attacked by a stranger. Is it active? What is the active? If you say I was attacked by a stranger, how would you change that sentence to active? So change the sentence. Change, I was attacked by a stranger, to active. A stranger attacked me. Very good. A stranger attacked me. Yes, a stranger attacked me. That is correct. Fantastic. Yes, thank you for those answers. All right. The second use of passive voice is when the focus is on who carried the action. For example, Leonardo da Vinci painted the Mona Lisa. Leonardo is the one who carried out the action. Change the sentence to active. Leonardo da Vinci painted the Mona Lisa. Change that sentence to active. The Mona Lisa was painted by Leonardo da Vinci. Fantastic. Vanika, it is not already in active, it is in passive because the focus is on who carried out the action. Okay. More uses of passive voice. When the focus is on how the action was carried out. So the focus is on how. The solo was played beautifully. So in most instances, it will include an adverb. The adverb there is beautifully. So it's telling us how the solo is played. Okay. Another use of passive voice is when the subject or doer is not known. Okay, so this time it's not known, not that it's not mentioned, identified, it's not known. The church was built in 1991. Let's change that to active. With passive and active voice, it can become a bit tricky because when you look at it, it might actually sound like it's active, but you'll find out that when you look at the uses, it becomes tricky to make the differences. Vanika says in 1991, the church was built. Great. Okay, thank you for those answers, JJ. It's the same as Vanika's. Another use of passive voice is when the subject does not want to be identified. So the emphasis is on what happened, not on the subject. So you could say murders were committed or blood was spilled. So in some cases, it breaks the rules that you've learned about grammar, where a sentence needs a subject, a verb, and an object. So it kind of breaks away from those rules when you use passive voice, which brings variety to your style of writing. Class, do you have any questions at this moment about passive or active voice? Anything that might have confused you? Anything that you're not sure about? Okay, Bob, you say there's something on the previous slide you're not sure about. Okay, the last answer, and Vanika wants to know the last answer on the previous slide. Okay, let's go back. Okay, so here's the last slide. To which question? About the church or the last point? The last point. Okay, so Bob wants to know, what do we mean when you say the subject is not known? Okay, so the subject is not known as in we don't know who built the church. We don't have that information on who built the church. So like the previous one, in one of the examples, we know that Leonardo is the one that painted the Mona Lisa. In this instance, we don't know who. Is that clear, Bob? Does that help? Vanika, you also wanted us to go to the last slide. Does that help? Okay, Bob says yes. And Vanika, what about you? About the murders. Okay, so please ask your question again, Vanika. I don't think I'm clear on what you're asking. It isn't passive. So we're looking at the use of passive voice. Okay, let me just go back. Okay, so we're looking at the uses of passive voice, and murders were committed. It is very tricky because it breaks, like I mentioned earlier, that the grammar rules are different and they're used differently. So in this case, yes, it is a complete sentence because murders becomes the subject. No, It doesn't become the subject. Wait, let's have a look at it again. When the subject does not want to be identified. So we don't know who committed the murders. That's what we mean by that. It's similar to the previous point about the churches. So Vanika wants to know how we change it to active voice. Class, how can we change it to active voice if we don't have a subject? Can we always change sentences from passive to active if we don't have more information on it? Can you include your own information on it? That's correct, Bob. No. So not always can we change from one to another. That's correct. Okay. I hope that answers your question, Vanika. All right, so let's look at the upside of using passive in your writing. We said it can improve your style and it helps you to express yourself more clearly. And it is helpful when you want to put the emphasis on the verb, subject, and object, and this improves reader engagement and understanding. Okay. And sometimes it just sounds better than active. It sounds more dramatic when you say murders were committed than when you try to write it in a different way, or blood was spilled. All right, let's have a look at some benefits of using active voice. Okay, it uses fewer words, thus making sentences simpler and clearer. It prevents grammatical mistake. Remember that example of I love you? You can't exactly say you love I. And it becomes a challenge for people who are not, who are still learning English, whose English is not their first language, to make those errors. Yeah. With passive, the subject, verb, and object rules don't apply, like I mentioned earlier. So those rules don't apply. So we kind of break away from what we've always been taught about simple sentences and how they should be a subject, object, and a verb. All right, so before we look at your activity, I'm going to send everyone a copy of the homework for today. Okay. So you can so long look at the activity. And just read it to yourself what you have to do. If for any reason you're not able to access the homework document, please email me and I will try to find another way that I can send it to you. Okay. So if you received the document, please just give me a thumbs up so I know that you are all good and you'll be doing homework today. All right, so the activity is you have to read the speech by Chimamanda Ngozi titled The Danger of a Single Story. So this is what you have to do. This is all in your homework, so you don't have to worry about writing these questions down or trying to take a screenshot. It's in your homework. You're just looking at it right now. Okay. If you have the document, a thumbs up so I know that you're all good. So the speech is quite long and it's not complete. So if you'd like the full version of this speech, you can listen to it on YouTube, or you can get a copy of the full written speech online. Just search for it using the title there, The Danger of a Single Story by Chimamanda Ngozi. Mac, I see you say you didn't receive the document. Okay, please take my email address at the end, and then I will email you the document. Okay, Mac? Bob has a question. Bob says, are there certain words we can identify that direct us if whether a sentence is passive or active? Klaus? Are there words that we can use so that we know that the sentence is active or passive? So we looked at one of the words that was mentioned was by, that we know that a sentence, depending on where the word by is. But I'd like the class to answer this. Okay. Yes, Simpio, I've already sent the document. Please take my email address, Simpio, at the end if you haven't received the document, okay? Bob as well. It might be because you don't have the application maybe on your phone or the device that you're using. All right, this is what you have to do. This is your activity. You have to identify 3 active sentences and 3 passive sentences. Most of the speech is in I won't tell you in which voice, okay? If maybe there is no active, you can say there's no active. Or if there's no passive, you can say there's no active. So this is just to test your knowledge on what we've learned today about passive and active voices. And you need to explain, say, there's only 3 passive and there's no active because with active voice, there needs to be this, 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 and that, and we don't have it here. Is everyone clear on the first question, or would you like me to repeat? Max says, look at the subject and object, and then that can be a clue for a passive sentence. Yes, that is correct. As we mentioned, Bob, earlier in the class, that where the subjects and objects are will be a guide for you on whether this is a passive or an active sentence. Okay. If you are clear on the first question, please give me a thumbs up on how you should go about answering it. Okay. The second one, pick another 3 passive sentences and turn them to active. Pick another 3 active sentences and turn them to passive. All right, ignore the first part. I want you to turn active sentences into passive, okay? So that first sentence of 2, ignore it, okay? Just pick 3 active sentences and turn them to passive. And remember, you may omit parts of the sentence if it doesn't make sense. Remember with I love you, it wouldn't make sense to say you love I. Unless it actually works if you ask it as a question, you love me, but you'd have to change the I to me. Number 3, as a budding writer, explain which voice you would be more comfortable with using in your writing. And you need to tell me why. Remember when I started the lesson, I said, we all have the potential to be professional writers. You've been doing it for more than 12 years in school, having to submit assignments, not just in English, but in other subjects as well. So you can actually make a career out of it. if you like. As you saw, there are a couple of famous writers in our very own continent, and they've done very well. All right, for number 4, you have to write a paragraph using passive and active voice detailing your lockdown experience. So it can be about the good, the bad, or the ugly of your time at home. For this part, I want you to be creative. I want you to use imagery, figures of speech, whatever comes to mind, okay? And we can break grammar rules if we're using passive voice. Remember what I said. For this activity, using both passive and active. So you have a lot to do for me today, and I will give you till Monday, okay? I'll give you till Monday to hand in your homework and for me to assess it. And if you want to hand in the homework that I gave this week as well, you are more than welcome to. Just send it to me. It's okay. If you don't have to feel like it's late, it's okay. You can send it. So now we are going to look at the speech that you have for homework, that you have to go through and have an activity on. Volunteers to read. So if you'd like to read, please raise your hand. Remember what I said about reading. It's good for you to practice your fluency, pronunciation. If you'd like to read, you can raise your hand or just tell me on the chat that you'd like to read. Okay, I'll read the page. I'm a storyteller, and I'd like to tell you of a few personal stories about what I like to call the danger of the single story. I grew up on a university campus in eastern Nigeria. My mother says that I started reading at the age of 2, although I think 4 is probably close to the truth. So I was an early reader, and what I read were British and American children's books. I was also an early writer, and when I began to write at about the age of 7, stories in pencil with crayon illustrations that my poor mother was obligated to read, I wrote exactly the kind of stories I was reading. All my characters were white and blue-eyed. They played in the snow, they ate apples, and they talked a lot about the weather. How lovely it was that the sun had come out. Now, this despite the fact that I lived in Nigeria and I had never been outside Nigeria. We didn't have snow, we ate mangoes, and we never talked about the weather because there was no need to. So there's more in your document that I sent for homework on the speech. So this is just the first part that I read for you, okay? All right. Coming up tomorrow is how to write a speech, but that'll be for Monday because tomorrow you are going to have a quiz. We're going to look at what we did this week, and I'm going to quiz you on that. Okay, so you're just going to do it together as a group, just to summarize what we did this week. Do you have any questions on today's lesson? Anything that you are not sure about? Comments? Okay, no questions, no comments. Yeah. Here's my email address. For the people that say,
Hi, Summer, just check your sound.